Hello there and welcome back to the garden. Y'all, I am so excited for today's video because it has been a very long time in the making and it is 2023, right? We all love ourselves a good little frugal gardening hack, and there's probably no better way to save money in the garden than turning free little cuttings like this one I just took off our fig tree earlier today and turning them into big, beautiful, healthy seedlings like this one right here. Now, problem is turning this into this can be very frustrating and more than a little bit complicated, which is why I've spent the better part of the last year trying as many different types of propagation and as many different plants as I could in order to come up with a set of steps, a methodology that is simple, easy, fast, low maintenance, and most importantly, very cost effective for anyone who just wants to get started to try out propagation without investing a ton of time or very much money at all. If you've got $5 and 15 minutes, stick with me until the end of the video. I think you are going to like the results. Now, the type of propagation that we're going to be doing today is often called propagation via cuttings. And propagation just means that we are going to be creating some new plants, and propagation via cuttings means we're actually going to be engaging in a little bit of light cloning. That's right. I hope you are ready to get your mad scientist on today. Let's get started. I've droned on a lot in this video about how it's going to be a particularly easy process, a particularly easy method of propagation. But the magic behind that, the reason that it is particularly easy, is that we have selected the right plants. The right plants really makes all of the difference because some plants really, really want to root. They want to take root in a container after being cut, and some really don't. So I've gone ahead and made a list of 5 edible perennials that I think is absolutely perfect for the first time propagator. And those plants are, first off, rosemary for a beautiful ornamental shrub that the pollinators absolutely love. Figs, a fig tree for a nice fruiting tree, just to break it up a little bit. Mint for a beautiful, good smelling ground cover that is extremely easy to propagate. Even if everything else fails, your mint probably won't fail. We've got blackberries for a fast growing caneberry, and then blueberries to round it out for a beautiful, delicious, but non-spreading berry. All right, let's start ourselves off with a nice cutting from this pretty little blackberry plant. Now, there are literally dozens, if not more, different techniques for taking cuttings for the purpose of propagation, but we are gonna go with the absolute simplest, and that is to just find a piece of greenwood, soft, new growth, not the hard, woodier brown growth that you're gonna find further down the stem. We're just gonna find a 4 to 6 inch section, and we are going to snip it off at a bit of an angle, just like that. There we go. That is all there is to it. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that while I only need 1 additional blackberry this year, I'm gonna go ahead and take 2 or even 3 cuttings just because I wanna make sure that at least one of them does take. Okay, here we are at our culinary rosemary in the front yard, and there is nothing special at all to getting this stuff. It's really easy to propagate. Just go for a 3 to 5 inch section. Doesn't need to be too large. And again, make sure that you are getting those soft greenwood pieces. Don't go down to where the stem gets hard and woody and brown. Here we are at a fig tree. These guys are incredible because their cuttings just want to take root. You can take a small piece, say 6 inches right below a leaf node. That's gonna work great. Or you can take a really large cutting. I actually stuck a 2-foot cutting right into the ground a month ago, and it is already rooting beautifully. Nothing better than a blueberry. Really simple here. We're just gonna take about a 4-inch section off this plant. Ideally, we'd be doing this a little bit earlier in the year, closer to early spring, but no big deal. Again, we're going for a nice angled cut, and that right there will turn into a beautiful blueberry plant. Alrighty, when it comes to this beautiful little peppermint back here, you have a couple of options, which is a little bit different than our other plants. You can totally just take clippings off the top of the plant, just the exact same as we did for everything else. Or what you can do is actually reach down here into the bottom and pull out one of the suckers, right? One of the underground suckers in its entirety, basically just removing this underground shoot from where it met the parent plant, where it met that original growing stem. And both options honestly work pretty well. All right, now that we have all of our cuttings ready to go, the next step is something called wounding. Basically, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take one of our cuttings, I've got our rosemary here, and we're just gonna remove all of the bottom foliage here. So I've done that for the most part, but you can see still got a couple here all the way up to basically the crown of the cutting up here. And then we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna take off the outer layer of tissue from the bottom inch or so of the cutting. And what that's gonna do is by removing this outer layer of tissue, we're gonna be exposing a layer called the cambium. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I might not be. Anyhow, the cambium contains undifferentiated cells. And by exposing those undifferentiated cells in here, we're basically going to make it easier for this cutting to induce those cells to turn into roots. Now this can be pretty simple. Some folks just actually score it, as in basically take a knife and just make some lines on the outside. I like to actually kind of remove those layers with a sharp knife. Gently here. It's really easy to take more than you meant to, so I'm doing it kind of slowly. You really only need to do this for about the bottom inch or so. And there we go. We've got a little cutting that is clean of foliage right up to the tip, right up to the crown, but we've left a couple leaves on there just to help provide energy down the line. And then we have wounded it here at the bottom to expose that cambium layer. That's all there is to it. You can go ahead and repeat that step for all of the cuttings that you have gathered today. Hey there, sorry for the interruption. Just taking a quick look at some of the ornamental plants that we have been propagating as well. These take even easier than those edible perennials, but that would be for another video. Anyhow, sorry for the interruption. I wanted to make a quick request. If you've enjoyed this video, if you think you are learning something from it, would you mind hitting the little thumbs up button for me? It truly makes all the difference in the world. It really means so much to us. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking your time to do so, and thank you for watching the video. Let's go ahead and get back to those cuttings. Alrighty, let's go ahead and prepare some containers. Now for the method that we're going through today, you do not need anything fancy. I'm just using a little mismatch of leftover containers from our tomato seed starting, as well as some leftover nursery pots, and then just this plastic cup that I punched some holes in. Any of them will work just fine. What's more, you don't even really need to fill them all the way up. You can if you want to, and they'll probably appreciate it later on, but if you only have, enough soil to fill these halfway up, that's totally fine. You also don't need a lot of containers because you really only need one container for each type of plant, because you can put multiple little cuttings into each one of these. Again, we're gonna be removing them pretty soon after they start rooting, so they don't need to be all that large. Anyhow, let's go ahead and fill them up. The next thing to know, and one of the really nice things about doing it this way, this method, is that you can just use standard potting soil. I'm just using my totally average DIY potting mix. Now, normally that wouldn't be the case. You would be using a special sort of DIY mix that is intended for propagated cuttings, and that tends to be high in things like vermiculite and sand. But because we are going with a very fast and easy and dirty method, you don't need to do that. Just go ahead and grab potting mix. It works pretty well. Before we move on, I definitely recommend that you go ahead and water in all of this potting mix. It's just gonna make your life much easier here later on. So go ahead and get some water on these. Alrighty, here is another very important little tip. Before we move in, before we actually put our cuttings into the dirt, it's a good idea to go ahead and pre-punch the holes where you will be placing those cuttings. So I like to just take a little pencil like this one right here and make those holes just for as many cuttings as I have before we dip them in the rooting hormone. This right here is plant rooting hormone, and it represents an optional but important step. By using it, you're just gonna get more consistently successful results. It also happens to be about $5 on Amazon for a big bottle, so I think it's well worth it. Basically, what we're gonna be doing here in a moment is taking the wounded end of our cuttings and dipping it into the plant rooting hormone. And what that's going to do is it is going to expose those undifferentiated cells, the wounded end of the cutting, right? That cambium layer. It's going to expose it to a plant rooting hormone that is going to help induce those cells to turn into roots. It just makes it more likely that more of your cuttings are actually going to turn into viable plants. Now, there are lots of different types of rooting hormones. Some of them you actually mix into liquid, some of them you just use as a powder, like this one right here. But regardless of the one that you bought, make sure that you are reading the instructions on how to use it and reading the safety label. Like any toxic material that we use in the garden, I think it's very important that we take some extra care. So I'm going to be using gloves, a mask, and some safety goggles over here, right here, before I actually open this up and start using it. Safety first, y'all. All right, assuming your cuttings are reasonably clean and dry, this can be a really simple process. You're just gonna go ahead, take that wounded end, dip it into the powder, kind of swirl it around in there a little bit, shake off or tap off the extras, and then stick it into the pre-made holes. Let's go ahead and do it. Now with the dipped cuttings in their containers, we're gonna go ahead and basically just pack in that dirt around them. And I'm keeping the glove on here on this hand just because we are touching that rooting hormone a little bit here again. And basically what this is doing is just collapsing that soil back around the cuttings rather than leaving it loose and full of air. If we want to have good root action, if you want to have rooting at all, you need to make sure that you have good contact between the plant tissues and that soil. Apologies for the change in light here. Ran out of light last night, so it is the next day. Now that all of our little cuttings are in their individual little pots, I've gone ahead and I placed them into a little bit of a shallow tray here. And what I'm gonna do next is just really gently water them in. Now, recall that we already got the soil pretty moist. I don't actually really need it any wetter than it is right now. What I'm trying to do by watering it in and very gently is actually collapse that soil down a little bit more than we were able to do with just our fingers, so that again, there's really good contact between that soil and the tissue of the cuttings. At this point, what you would normally do is you would cover up the plants, either with something like a bag or a humidity dome, and you would raise those humidity levels quite high. You would bring all of them inside, you would put them on a heat mat or at least in a warm location, and you would put them somewhere with sort of indirect light for a long period of time, some number of months, and you would just take care of them indoors. We, however, are going to do none of that. Alrighty, I've got our little tray of cuttings right here, and the next step is very, very easy. Basically, just find a spot outdoors, preferably that is flat-ish and that receives mostly indirect sunlight, that isn't getting too much direct sun, and put them down. And at that point, basically your only job is to make sure that the soil around those cuttings stays evenly moist. Now I like to put ours kind of underneath this giant overgrown container raspberry. This raspberry plant, by the way, was one of the first YouTube videos. Planting this was one of the first YouTube videos we made, so it sort of holds a special place in my heart. The other nice thing about this raspberry bush is that I have to manually water it anyways. So by putting these cuttings underneath it, just saves me a little bit of time, and it helps shade them as well. That's all there is to it. I always think these kinds of videos are more fun if you get to actually see the results. So I went through the exact same set of steps myself with the exact same plants a couple of months ago so that I could show you, and here they are. Now keep in mind that all of these plants have been sitting outside, uncovered and completely neglected during our rather cool rainy spring, and they rooted beautifully. We didn't get 100% rooting, meaning some of the cuttings it didn't take, but we did get plenty of plants from each type, and I've actually already had to give away a few plants of each because I was running out of room. We've got our beautiful little blackberry right here, and I know just where I want to put this, and we've got our beautiful little blueberry. This is going to need to go out soon. The blueberry doesn't really like to be in this potting mix. It needs a special kind of mix, but it's setting some roots and it's ready to go out. We've got our rosemary. It is doing phenomenally. The rosemary, actually, you can already see the roots in there. It's doing very, very well. We've got our mint. This was actually taken from a runner, so it looks a little bit different than the cuttings we took off the top, but it looks like it's already really filling out this container with roots. Mint just roots so quickly and so easily. And then we just have this absolutely gorgeous fig plant that is doing so well. Again, the roots are coming through the bottom. It's already filling out this container. You can see it's really in there quite nicely. All of these plants at the nursery would cost us between $10 and $50. I mean, they'd be a little bit bigger, but they wouldn't be any healthier. And we got these for effectively zero effort, right? 15 minutes to do the whole process. Effectively no money, and they are looking really healthy and really beautiful. Not to mention, we didn't just get plants for ourselves, we got plenty of extras that I was able to give away to friends and family and neighbors, and that just feels wonderful. I think the whole thing is pretty darn incredible. After say 4 to 6 weeks, you can start checking your cuttings for rooting. And you can do that just by giving them a gentle tug. And you don't want to do this too often because you can damage them. But a plant that is rooted is going to very quickly feel firm. It's going to feel in place. You're going to tell that it has roots in there. And in fact, this one is really nicely in there. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh my goodness, actually, this thing has rooted really, really well. It is obviously ready to transplant. You can see that it's keeping the whole root ball in place. Now what's nice is the roots don't actually need to be this large for you to transplant them out. Even if you're only seeing a couple centimeters, an inch or so of root, that's enough to go ahead and move it to its final location. In fact, for a lot of these, you don't really want to leave them in the small containers for too long, and you don't want to leave them in a super crowded container for too long. You can see that I've already taken out all of the extras and given them away because I wanted to give each plant its own little container to sit in until we made this video. All right, we've got our little pot here, and I'm going to try and move quickly because I honestly do not know if this little glass coffee table I'm using as a makeshift potting table can hold up this container. Now, there's not a lot to planting out these rooted cuttings. It's pretty much the same as any other starter plant, which is to say it's very easy. I would say there's probably only two things you want to keep in mind. First off, be a little extra gentle. It's likely that their roots are not as established. It's likely that those roots are smaller, and as you're pulling them out, most of them aren't going to keep their root ball like this. This rosemary just happened to root really, really quickly and really, really readily. Most of them you're actually just going to be pulling the whole cutting out, kind of like a little tiny seedling. So try and be very gentle with them. The second thing to keep in mind is that you don't want to push it in terms of watering. These root systems, because they are still so new and so small, aren't all that efficient at drawing up moisture. Obviously the rosemary is going to be just fine if we let it dry out a little bit, but something like this blueberry, and I just took a look at its roots are very, very small still. This blueberry would dry out quite quickly, so we want to make sure that we are keeping it well moistened and that we are adding mulch to wherever we plant it out. All right, let's go ahead and just plop this right in. Oh, perfect. That looks beautiful. Just for fun and because I can't help myself, let's take a quick look at the fig here. Ooh, ooh, my goodness, look at the root system on this. I mean, it has just completely filled out that container. It's actually getting a little bit root bound in this little container just after a couple of months. Absolutely incredible. These figs do so well. Now, obviously, that's one of the reasons that we chose this plant here, because it roots so readily. But if you have any other plants that you love to propagate, that you find really easy to clone via cuttings, would you mind leaving them in the comments? I know I would absolutely love to hear from you and your ideas, and I'm sure other folks watching this would love that as well. I also want to say that this video is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to propagation, via cuttings or any other method. And if it is a hobby that you end up enjoying, if you try out this process and you say, hey, that's really cool, I've got a bunch of free cuttings, there is so much more to learn. So I'll link to a couple more good articles on kind of more in-depth, more advanced methodologies, and maybe a couple more videos from other YouTube gardeners that I enjoyed watching while I was making this video and while I was doing research for this video. Otherwise, as always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope to see you on the next one. And until next time, happy gardening, y'all.